anarchism. If you mean by anarchism the media image, which goes back to the late 19th century, anarchism just means people running wild, breaking windows, and so on. Okay, and that conception of anarchism I would agree. But there's another conception, which is the actual conception, which is the core of traditional anarchist thought and activism. It goes back to the Enlightenment, in fact. Literally, it comes pretty much out of the origins of classical liberalism, which one great anarchist thinker, Rudolf Rocker, narco-syndicalist analyst, argued, and I think with some plausibility, that classical liberalism, which grew out of Enlightenment ideals, and incidentally is rather different when you actually read Adam Smith from the imagery that's concocted. But the classical liberal ideas, as he put it, ran aground on the reefs of capitalism. It was blocked by capitalism, couldn't survive capitalism, and he argues that his particular strain of anarchism, anarcho-syndicalism, was the natural outgrowth of classical liberalism in an age where you have to overcome the barriers introduced by the rise of capitalism, later corporate capitalism. And I think there's some sense to that. The core of the anarchist tradition, which again has Enlightenment roots, is to raise questions about authority, hierarchy, and domination, and to point out that they are not self-justifying, whatever structure they are. You know, master-slave, patriarchal husband, obedient wife, imperial power dominating the world, whatever the structure of authority is, it is not self-justifying, and it should be challenged. And if it cannot justify itself, it should be dismantled. That's the core principle of anarchism. In that sense, I think everyone should be an anarchist. And if you look at the notice I say, if it cannot be justified. I think there are cases where a justification can be given. So just to take a personal example, I once, only once, thankfully, slapped my little daughter on her hand. She didn't like it. You can ask her now what she thinks about it. She's grown up now, she slaps my hand. But the occasion was when she was about 3 years old, and we had an electric stove, and as you know, the grills or whatever they're called, they stay hot after they turn black, and she was reaching to put her hand on the stove, so I grabbed her hand and slapped it, one and only time. I think that was, you can give a justification for that, but it takes effort to justify. It was an act of authority, of course. You have to work pretty hard to justify structures of authority and domination. Usually they're not self-justified. And as moral consciousness expands, which I think it does over time, there have been repeated challenges to these structures in our own lifetimes, in fact. I think there are moves in the right direction. And that's the basic anarchist conception. It leads on to a conception of social order